everyone. Thank you for joining this lesson internalization meeting. Today we're focusing on small group planning and how we can effectively use the HMH structured literacy and into reading curriculum. Let's start with pulling up our module 4, week 1, literacy centers and your structured literacy small group in ed. Is everyone there? Okay, good. So during our last meeting, we discussed using a few of these resources in your classrooms. Paul, how have you been incorporating these resources?
Well, I shared last time, a few of my students have been struggling with concepts of print. So I've been using some of the small group instructional recommendations in the structured literacy curriculum, specifically the concepts of print. So for this one, I think it's on page 377, have students practice identifying letters, words, and sentences of the text. And to do that, I've been using some of those Start Right Reader recommendations in the differentiation with text portion, just because I wanted them to practice with the text that was new. We've gone over that code of text a couple times.
All right, so that's actually really good to hear, Paul, because I've been using some of those as well. And one of the good things about using like the structured literacy small groups is that we can add on each day, right? So like on Monday or our first day, we like do an echo read and we read together so I can kind of hear where scholars are. And then day 2, we add on to that. So we're using the same reader, but we practice the spelling of some of our irregular words. And then day 3, I let them actually work on this independently, having them highlight the words, looking at the scale, because I've had a few of my scholars who are also struggling with print concept as well. So.
Okay, excellent strategies, both of you. I appreciate you sharing. I really like how you incorporated the use of decodable readers in ed for the small groups that you've done, and that you use them in 2 different ways for 2 different purposes. So one being the initial consonant sounds, and then also for the concepts of print, because you all know and understand what your scholars need, so you were able to do that. I appreciate that. So Megan, what about you?
I've also been able to leverage a lot of the routines from structured literacy, but I've also gone into reading to grab some of those materials that have been really helpful. Especially I have a large population of English language learners. The vocabulary cards have helped to kind of explicitly get vocabulary practice and instruction to them. I also use different things from into reading, like the Know It, Show It workbooks or the table talk activities for small group sessions, and the students have seemed to really enjoy those discussions, and it's allowed them to deepen their understanding of the text.
As a long-term substitute, I've only been teaching for 6 weeks, but I've been trying to integrate the writing prompts in the engage and response section. So we have been starting this as a whole group, and then we've just been adding on during the small group time. So they seem to really help the students build their confidence in their writing skills.
So I have a few concerns about like a few of the resources that we're using and how we're relying a little too heavily on these resources. As a teacher, I really wanted to be creative in my classroom and have flexibility, but I feel like what if we're missing out on addressing some of the unique needs our scholars have by being so closely tied to some of these resources?
I think it's really important that we remember these resources are designed to provide a strong foundation for our scholars. While being creative and flexible is important, we want to ensure that we keep some sort of consistent framework for our scholars. And I know in the past we've had discussions about like using magnetiles and things that weren't like curriculum-based things in small group time. So I really think we need to kind of stay close to what's provided to make sure we're meeting the needs, not only of the standards and of our students, but making sure that we're reaching them to their closest benchmarks academically as possible.
I appreciate everyone's perspective, so thank you for sharing. I just want to make sure to point out that our primary focus should remain on HMH's structured literacy and into reading. So we can certainly consider integrating more best practices in small groups, but let's ensure that our main efforts are directed towards making the most out of the resources that we actually have already.
I agree too. This way we can maintain consistency and still address specific needs of our scholars.
I'm on board with that. I think that would provide a balanced approach for us.
Excellent. So now, since we're talking about best practices, let's address another important issue. So building stamina in independent reading and in our scholars' work. This is crucial for our students' long-term success. And how have you been tackling this in your classrooms?
So one of the things I've been doing is I've been using the reading corner recommendation from the literacy centers inside the into reading curriculum. Specifically, I've been using that recommendation to have students use the response journals, and I've been having them pull from the Rigby level libraries for their independent reading.
So I've actually had a similar approach. To Paul's point, I've made my reading center very cozy according to what HMH has said. So we have some mood lighting in there. The scholars are very excited to go over there, and I have a lot of high interest books based on what they really want to see. And using those journals absolutely helps because it helps keep the scholars accountable to what they're learning.
And I found that setting clear goals and providing regular feedback helps. I use comprehension activities to ensure that students are focused and that, again, they're understanding everything.
I've been integrating the independent writing tasks with reading, so the writing prompts and HMH really help encourage students to reflect on their reading, which helps build their stamina for both reading but also the writing as well.
So as I've been pushing in and pulling out students into the resource room, everything that you guys have mentioned have been amazing strategies. I just want to remember that we're building regular day-to-day stamina with our scholars, especially focusing on our students that have disabilities. So thinking about like short and focused tasks that can gradually be released to increase students getting to the longer tasks. And then making sure for our kiddos with disabilities that we're using the scaffolded resources that are aligned to some of their IEPs, making sure like we're breaking down tasks into smaller chunks for them and making things manageable, as well as incorporating as many possible visuals as we can as we're thinking about that other population of scholars that kind of reside in all of your classes.
These are all excellent strategies, so thank you everyone for sharing. Let's continue with doing section C on our lesson internalization so that we can actually get all these written down and start planning for our lessons for this week and making sure that our scholars are engaged through small groups.
Thank you.
Thank you.